going to be locked out, or it's not going to be off or tangential to the last two lectures. They don't really have to be one after the other. We can actually have these before the other two lectures, because I even find this a nice introduction to the topic on cancer, or the presentation on cancer tomorrow. So this topic is going to talk about xenobiotics and how they are made less toxic so that they are not going to cause the cancers that we are going to discuss tomorrow. So to start, I think we would better be defining, or we should have the operational definition of terms. Anyone who knows where sino is coming from? Sino. Well, of course, if it's Tagalog, it's just who, diba? Sino. Like, sino ang, okay, diba? But sino is a Greek word. It's from a Greek prefix, meaning what? Okay, strangers. When you have xenophobia, you have fear of strangers. But if you have xenobiotics, you have fear of biotics. Basically, biotics would be what? Something that has to do with body metabolism. But if you put them together, xenobiotics are nothing but substances that are foreign to the body. Okay. Would you welcome anything foreign? So you are xenophobic against xenobiotics. You cannot have a blanket declaration that no, anything foreign is not welcome. Because when you talk about xenobiotics, this could be drugs. These drugs might be helpful. But when you talk about illicit drugs, then of course that's not going to be welcome. You're not even welcome in Davao. Okay, when you have drugs, you know what happens to, okay? So that means what? Sometimes there's really a need for these foreign substances to come in because they are pure, or you don't have a choice. You inhale them. They're all over you. They're in the cream that you put in your face every night. They're in the alcohol that you drink. They're in the cigarette that you smoke. Okay? So of course the room is hushed because there are people who drink and smoke. And it's okay. Tomorrow there will be more presentation for you. But there are also those who espouse advocacy for healthy living, like people here distributing their singlets for the Run for Guide Foundation, right? Okay. So I hope that you don't run and then smoke after. Okay? Because I've seen some people do it. Like, okay, I ran today, I need to nebulize, and then you smoke. Okay? Metabolism of xenobiotics. That being said, let me share with you what an environmentalist shared. Something that is very appropriate for today. If you're not just focused on your textbooks, if you're not just focused on your Facebook, you are likely to see that the world over is talking about the road to Durban, which is about climate change, Durban in South Africa, the climate change, talking about Kyoto Protocol, talking about G8 countries trying to convince big countries like China, USA, and India to lower their carbon emissions from their factories because they're contributing to global warming and to the holes in the ozone layer. These are the chemicals that we're talking about. This talks about acid rain, this talks about pesticides, insecticides, etc. There's no escaping these things because these are all born out of the technology and breakthroughs, not just in medicine but in the industry. So as early as 1920, Rachel Carson already said something about things that are worth noting and worth preserving in the environment. And she never could have said it in a better way. Like, as crude a weapon as a caveman's club, the chemical barrage has been hurled against the fabric of life. As early as 1920s, and then course, in the 1940s, you have the atomic bomb destroying Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So she could never have been right. She was a visionary. Okay? So, synbiotics, the definition, are substances, chemical substances that are foreign to the biological system in vivo, inside our body. They include naturally occurring compounds. Remember, even naturally occurring compounds may be considered as synbiotics. Drugs, environmental agents, carcinogens, which we sometimes recognize and do not recognize, which we sometimes recognize but pretend not to recognize, for example, smoking, and insecticides. Okay? So those are your synbiotics. Now, of course, in the year 1970s, not exactly in the 70s, there was an epidemic of malaria and it killed millions of people all over the world. So these big companies came up with a pesticide that would have a machine gun effect against mosquitoes, and they invented DDT, which was a very potent mosquito killer. However, they just don't kill the mosquitoes, they also kill humans through toxic means. Okay? Along with DDT is another insecticide called Lindane. Remember the active components. It's an alkyl-reductive dehalogenation of an organochlorine pesticide. So it's a chlorine-containing pesticide. Later on, you will hear of processes like dehalogenation, and that is how exactly your DDT is made less toxic. But then again, even with that being made less toxic, can still cause toxicity to the humans. This DDT has since been taken out of the market. Lindane is still there, but with very extreme precautions for its use. Now, we're talking about metabolism of foreign substances. Okay, why is there a need to metabolize foreign substances? To make them less foreign? Not really. To make them leave leave the body as soon as possible, because they're foreign, they're not supposed to be there. So phase 1 and phase 2. Between the two, it is actually phase 2 that is more significant, in that it has a more ramification with regard to detoxifying, or as a detoxifying process or metabolism. However, phase 1, because everything that is numbered begins with 1, is just as important. Okay? It is a major reaction whose role is to terminate the action of the drug. But the end point actually would be to make the drug more water soluble. When the drug is more water soluble in an organ that is lipophilic, because the liver is a very good agent for lipid soluble drugs. Okay, they make it more water soluble, then it can be easily or better excreted through the urine. Okay? So phase 1 major reaction is to terminate the action of the drug through the following reactions or processes. Major would be hydroxylation, and through monooxygenases and other enzymes, through cytochrome P450, a compendium of many enzymes in the liver and other parts of the body. You'd be surprised where you'll find them. And other reactions that are minor but are just as important would be your deamination, removal of an amide group, dehalogenation, removal of a halogen, for example, your chloride, desulfuration, epoxidation, peroxygenation, and reduction. So for purposes of exams, this would be a very important slide. So the generic mechanism, so for example, we have an oxygenase. They catalyze the incorporation of oxygen from oxide into organic compounds. And these enzymes contain a variety of cofactors such as heme, flavins, sterines, copper, and manganese that activate the oxide to the singlet state. Okay, monooxygenases is incorporates only one oxide group as hydroxyl, and the other goes off as water. That is also called hydroxylase. So this is how it would look like. You would have a parent compound, you would have a cofactor, and your dioxide. If you follow the monooxygenase reaction, wherein one goes off or incorporate one oxide, so you have your hydroxyl group now, you have your cofactor, and you have your water. So this way, your compound has been rendered less toxic because it is more water soluble. The reaction would be the same with the dioxygenases. However, instead of just one oxide, you incorporate a dioxide in your parent compound. And this is your end product. So phase 1 monooxygenase reaction would involve epoxidation and hydroxylation reactions as well as aromatic reactions. So the generic mechanism of dehalogenation is reductive dechlorination in an anaerobic setting. You just remove your chloride and this becomes your compound, less toxic. Just remove your chloride through hydrolytic dehalogenation. You have your chloride, this becomes a hydroxyl group. Oxygenolytic dehalogenation, O2, is followed by spontaneous halide loss, where you lose your chloride in the process. And an example of a dehalogenation reaction would be that of the dehalogenation of your DDP, which I said is a chloride-containing compound, as well as your lindane, which is your vinyl chloride. Okay, so this is an example of your monooxygenase reacting your acetyl-CoA and succinate. These are your dioxygenases, wherein its substrate is acetaldehyde and pyruvate. So, just a blanket or a generic representation also of phase 1 drug oxidation. Okay, you have reduction of your NADPH becomes oxidized, and the oxidized compound along with your heme-containing compound and your cytochrome P450, you have your parent drug plus dioxide, you have a hydroxyl group of your you have a hydroxyl group with your drug, and then water, which makes the whole thing, or the parent compound, become more water soluble. Okay? I hope you pay attention because I think the PC or the computer's capacity to save files is disabled, right? So this is an example of your benzopyrene to becoming phenol, and we will talk about it later. Unsaturated aliphatic hydroxylation, your vinyl chloride becomes chloroacetaldehyde. Okay. Heterocyclic hydroxylation, heterocyclic compounds are hydroxylated on the 3 positions. So this is where you put your hydroxyl group over your heterocyclic compound. Then oxidation, hydroxylamine formation, your aniline dies, which has an amide group, becomes less toxic by becoming phenyl hydroxylamine, hydroxylation reaction. Okay, this way it is also more water soluble. Deamination is the removal of an amide group again, This is your amphetamine. Of course, you're familiar with this, not because you're using it, but because you read about it. Your uppers. Again, you remove your group. This is a less toxic substance. Desulfuration is removal of the sulfur group. Again, part of your phase 1 reaction. This is your sulfur group from the parathionin, which is an insecticide. It's removed by, and it becomes a phosphooxytyrane intermediate, and then acted further to become a paraoxan. However, even if it's a paraoxan and with the removal of the sulfur group, it still is an active compound, primarily because of your nitrogen oxide. So phase 2 reactions. Those were your phase 1 reactions, the earlier slides. So you have your phase 2. Phase 2 is just as important as phase 1 because most of the reactions here are like a continuity of phase 1. That's how the number sequences are as well. After 1 comes 2. However, in number 2, conjugation is the most common or major reaction in cinebiotics. So what you usually conjugate would be polar metabolites, and you conjugate them with glucuronic acid, sulfate, acetate, and glutathione. So anyone here who's watching TV or reading magazines will be familiar with glutathione and methylation. So phase 2 reaction, we're going to talk about glucuronides, glucuronic acid, because it is the other substance which polar metabolites or parent compounds would conjugate with or would tag along with to make them less toxic. Hold on, I need to take this call.